Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Ray Martin, who chronicles his life in the past life of having been on a sabbatical that he thought may only be about 6 months, but ended up being a 14-year journey where through this process, he learned himself, he discovered what his talents are, and actually from this period of what was going to be somewhat of a short-term sabbatical, ended up redefining his life and taking on a new career approach. He chronicles his sabbatical, this 14-year period of his life, in a book that's called Life Without a Tie. Marty, what are some takeaways we can learn from Ray Martin?
Ray has a great personality, and I think part of that personality was what helped him get through this life journey that he has gone through. The one thing I like is he's coaching other men and helping them find their own path, not what other people expect of them.
I think one of the things we can learn from Ray, through Ray, is what we're doing now may not be our calling, what provides the greatest fulfillment to us, but as we take an introspective look, we can learn who we are. Let's listen to Ray and learn from his life experience. Ray, it's great to have you with us. Our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing the journey as you describe it. You were, and well, you are a very successful person, but yet you intended to take a 6-month sabbatical in life and just do something a little bit different. And through a series of events, that 6-month sabbatical turned out to be a 14-year journey where, by your description, you lived out of a backpack. Wow. That is going to be very interesting to learn about. Our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing, wow, 6 months turned into 14 years. Wow, what all went into that? Ray, it's great to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks. And it's lovely to meet both of you. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Ray, start us out that, you thought that a 6-month sabbatical would be appropriate in your initial thinking. 6 months to do what during this sabbatical?
Yeah, well, it came at the tail end of a very tough period of time for me. It was at 2003. I'd been married for 6 years at that point, and the person I was married to was also my business partner. So we founded a company together, and it had been really, really successful. In 2002, I was the recipient of the Daily Telegraph Business Leader of the Year award, and it had sort of ticked all my boxes and made all my dreams come true to do that. But when about a year after that, my wife came home from a meeting with a client on one afternoon. I'll never forget it. And she said, "I'm leaving you, and I'm leaving the company." It was very sudden, and it kind of ripped my reality apart in moments. It was sort of devastating. And at more or less the same time as that was happening, my father got very ill and passed away shortly afterwards. And so within a period of about 3 or 4 months, my life had just completely imploded as I knew it. And I was no longer going to be married. I was no longer living in the house in London that we lived in. My dad had gone, and the company was irrevocably going to change. And I was just sort of lost, to be really honest. I'd never experienced so much challenge in one go in my life, and I was lost. I felt sort of broken, depressed, didn't know what to do. And after a year of being in that state, more or less, someone said to me, "Why don't you take a 6-month sabbatical to reflect on everything that's happened, maybe get some new insight into life and decide where that might take you?" And at the same time I was receiving that advice, I was trying to help myself too. And I read a book called, I don't know if you've heard of it, you two. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. It's quite a famous book.
I've not read that.
Yeah, I've often heard people speak about it or make reference to it. And it's written by a nurse, a hospice nurse in Australia, and she only works with people in the last days or weeks of their life. She says she asks them all the same question, and that question is, "What do you most regret about your life?" And she said, "I could tell you, I've spoken to thousands of people. I could tell they all say the same 5 things, never any different. It doesn't matter what whether they're a millionaire or a janitor, but same 5 things. And the number one regret was, how she wrote it was, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me." And this was happening at the time when my life was disintegrating. And I wasn't surprised on one level, because there were parts of my life which I felt I was living as if I was someone else. It was someone else's dream, not mine, even though I was very competent at it. And so the sabbatical idea started to take root in my thinking, because I thought that would give me a quest, a kind of chance to ask the question, what does living life true to myself look like for me? If I wasn't this guy, I wasn't doing this, who would I be really? What would be true? And I didn't know. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to travel and learn and see and explore and find out for myself. And I thought 6 months should do it. That should be enough. But it wasn't. It wasn't. So that's roughly.
Now, Ray, I'm curious, as you have, what appears you've taken a very deep introspective look.
Yeah.
As you think back on your early life, did with no intent to blame, but did you think your parents had an expectation of you that was beyond or different than what you thought you were? Was any of that involved?
No, I'd say in my case, I don't. My parents were from a sort of working class background, and when I used to ask my mum as a child, what should I do? Do you think, when I was thinking about that stuff, she said, "Honestly, Ray, just do whatever makes you happy." And so they were really quite laid back about it. So I don't think that they were gunning for me to be. They really wanted to. I've got an older brother, and they just wanted the two of us to just be well educated and happy and have a better life as they saw it than the life they had grown up, which was a life of austerity and hardship, because they grew up during the Second World War, and they grew up in poor families relatively, and they just wanted us to have a better life than they had. So they did everything to make sure we had a good start, but they never imposed upon us what we should do. They just said, do whatever makes you happy. So I think my influence was coming more from what I call the silent collective. When they say that you should, and it's always like, who is the they that is the they say? It was like that silent mass that you don't have names for, but it's the common thinking of the era. And I was growing up, what I learned, what the message I received, like, to be happy, what you need to do is you need to get married, get a house, have kids, get a decent job that has a good pension, and that's it. And all of that equals happiness. So that was what I call the off-the-shelf life story, the mainstream life. And so I was just following that without really questioning it or ever saying, is that what I really want to do? I just accepted that as being the truth of the way life is.
So you went through 14 years of what? Analyzing, redefining
No,
yourself?
no. I was planning to go for 6 months, but the first thing that I did when I got abroad, when I had my backpack, I was in Thailand, to begin with. And remember, I'd been a very driven and regimented businessman. And so my whole life before that moment was all about setting plans and targets and goals, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goals, and driving towards goals. This was the first time in my life, literally, where I never had any obligation to do that. I never had any targets, any daily routine, any goals. It was psychologically scary. I was all over the place without having tram lines to go down like that. And so I had to, first of all, write some guiding principles for myself to live by to keep myself psychologically safe, as I would call it. And I didn't have them when I left. I prepared my life logistically and I'd re-engineered my life financially to be able to do this kind of life. But psychologically, I hadn't given much thought to it. So I discovered when I was actually abroad, gosh, what do I need to do? So I wrote principles to guide myself, including self-acceptance was one of them, because I'd given myself a really hard time about how I'd failed as a husband in the marriage. And I was very critical in my own head towards myself. So I had to learn how to start loving myself again and be a bit more loving like that. Non-attachment, I wanted to explore what a new life could look like without being attached to any particular outcome. So non-attachment was quite an important principle. I wanted to make a contribution to my friends and family back home, even though I was traveling on the other side of the world. So I started writing a blog about the journey so I could share what I was learning. A principle of modesty and frugality. I didn't want to be showy, like I was as a businessman. I wanted to be very modest and spend only what I needed to and live in accommodations that really were modest and make my money last as long as possible. So I had these 10 guiding principles to live by. And that kept me sort of mentally safe and sane actually for a while. But I still had a lot of anxiety and stress until someone suggested to me, why don't you go and do a 10-day Vipassana retreat? And I said, what is a Vipassana retreat? I have no idea what that is. And they said, well, you go into a Buddhist monastery, you meditate for 10 days in silence with the monks. And each day the monks would teach you about the Buddhist teaching. They call it the Dharma. They'll teach you the Dharma and you learn how to understand yourself at a much deeper level. And you learn to observe your own mind in action. And you see who you really are, through the observation of your own mind and the problems it causes for you. And I thought, I think I need to do that because I was very noisy in my head. And so I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat, and that changed everything. That was a massive game changer.
Now, let me ask you, what was the reason for going to Thailand? And I spent time in Thailand at Udorn, what was then
Yes.
Royal Thai Air Base, and then
Yes.
Ubon. And so I was with the military at the time.
Okay.
But now your accent indicates to me you were born in the UK, and if that's
Yes.
true, then what was it? What was the attraction in Thailand?
Well, I the kind of knowledge and insight I was hoping to gain was I wanted it to be kind of Eastern, like the Eastern philosophy, because I realized that a lot of my thinking was molded by people who were very similar to me in London. And so I didn't want to hang out in London or a Western city because all I'd do then would just hear the same kind of thinking I already had. I wanted to be in a part of the world that was very, very different so I could really hear different thinking. And so Thailand or Asia, it was Asia actually. But then I just by chance met somebody who was also going to be traveling around Thailand. And we decided we'd travel together. And that just made it easier for me to go there first because there was someone who had travel experience who was going and I could go with her. And it made it easier. I had no experience of independent travel at all when I left. I was 45, but the only traveling I'd done was business travel where everything's organized for you. You got someone to pick you up at the airport, take you to your hotel. You never have to think about any logistics or anything like that. It's all done. but I had never done any independent travel when you're booking the flights and stuff yourself and you're looking for your own places to stay and stuff like that.
Well, now, after you, I'm going to use the term discovered, rediscovered, redefined yourself, your purpose. And I don't know that I'm using terms you would
Yeah.
use, but once you found kind of a new life, did you remarry? And were you able to kind of redefine and pick up where you left off, but taking or maybe having a new purpose in life? Is that kind of what the revelation was?
Well, no, it wasn't so sort of cut and dried in one step like that. It was, I was in a fortunate position when I got divorced. I didn't have children, so I had no dependents back in the UK, and also I had sold my business to somebody else and let that go. So I had nothing to actually return for as such. So there was no pressure on a deadline for me to get back to the UK, and I had enough money to sustain myself for a couple of years from what I'd saved from my previous life. So I was okay financially. So I could just be in the search and be in the inquiry with no pressure or time deadline whatsoever. So that was good for me. No, I haven't got married since I got divorced. I'm still not married again. I'm with my life partner now. We're not married, but we're together. Um, and at first I was just interested in the 6 months. After 6 months I did this 10-day retreat, I became quite interested in mindfulness because I realized that there was a lot of benefit of living mindfully that I'd never really been exposed to. It was all starting to become clear for me that living mindfully was something that was going to be very important in the future, whatever I chose to do. And so as soon as I came out of the monastery, I wanted to join a community where I could practice meditation and be much more mindful and do that on a regular basis. So I went to a place called Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand where there was a community of such people living, and I joined in and meditated every week and started to focus my area of interest on my inner life rather than what was going on outside, because that was the part of me I'd never really looked into or researched. Yeah, so that the first year, a couple of years, were much more about my inner journey than anything on the outside. That could all wait. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. And now, do you, as a result of that experience, mindfulness, do you still today start your day, or at least at some point have, whether it's yoga, whatever it
Yes,
is,
I do.
that,
I do. Yes.
okay. And so our listeners are going to be very interested in what you've discovered as a new way to, well, your mindfulness. That how do you structure your? I think they would be asking something to the effect. How do you structure your life now?
Well, I don't know if it changes the way I structure my life. I'm a logical analyzer type mind. And so I'm very well organized. I've got spreadsheets and, schedules, and I've always had those and I still always have them. But being mindful for me is much more about, the Buddhists would talk about it in terms of like say, we all use our mobile phone, right? We've got one. This is mine.
Yep.
And the mobile phone is useful because it's got apps on it. It's the apps that do the useful work.
Yes.
Now, apps, you've got to have the apps to use, to apply. To apply the phone, you've got to have the apps. But to make the apps work, you need energy. You need to charge the phone with energy. Need to recharge it. And that is the meditative part. There's two parts to meditation. There's the meditative practice, which is about creating mindful energy, recharging yourself, rejuvenating your batteries. And then there's the applied part of the work, which is how do you then go into a conversation where you would normally sort of shout and scream and be angry? How do you maintain your equanimity? How do you apply this mindful energy inside you on the outside with someone else? So this is the way it's changed my life. It's given me a sort of a framework and tools and awareness to know that every day I've got to spend some time recharging my batteries. And that for me means sitting still in silence, just with my eyes closed, just being focused on my breathing, which is just calming my nervous system, making me aware of any agitations going on and separating from them a bit more and having less stress about that. So that's a practice. That takes physical practice. And then that means when I'm in a moment where someone's annoyed me or something, or a guy's driven in front of me and cut me up in the traffic, I don't have to use my autopilot reaction. I can switch that up and I can sidestep that because I've got the calm energy inside me that enables me to pause and say, in this moment, I want to choose a wise response to what's happened and not the one I might choose if I was not mindful.
The way I'm processing what you're saying is you are much more aware now of your emotional inner being than you
Yes,
were in the past.
totally.
And some of us
Yeah.
would call that emotional intelligence, EI.
That's a part of it. That's a part of it, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now that you know what would have irritated you, your emotional reaction to, and so forth, you now know how to manage all of those things better than what you used to in the past. Am I processing what you're saying correctly, Ray?
That's the gist of it. Yeah, that's the gist of it. But I find that, it requires constant awareness and attention to stay in that place of equanimity. Because I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, Ron. I don't want to promote myself as a sort of this angelic standard, but I do my best, and I still have days where I lose my temper. It's not possible always.
Sure. And none of us is, quote, perfect, but yet, okay, every day is a learning experience, so
Yeah,
to speak. And
yeah.
so,
I used
and
to, I mean, just to put it in simple reference points, when I was married, I'd have sometimes very loud and aggressive arguments with my partner, and they would be very destructive on the fabric of our relationship. And that used to happen regularly. And I'd say now that rarely, if ever, happens for me. I'm much more able to stay in a place of love, compassion, and calmness, even when I'm in those places where I'm in disagreement.
I want to take a very brief moment to tell you about myself, the Cooper Culture, a certified veteran-owned small business. I am a retired lieutenant colonel serving the Air Force for 22 years as an F-4 pilot, commander. I have 300 combat missions. I specialize in executive leadership training, team building, and workplace culture, where we help businesses to develop a culture of loyalty, trust, and by developing personality traits and personal strengths, we can help identify those traits that support the company's objectives. We do this through half-day and all-day training shops. I'm also a public speaker where I welcome the opportunity to speak with your group to help you develop your team to the point where people are loyal and they know exactly how they fit in the organization and contribute to your strategic objectives. Through that, you will have a very profitable company and a psychologically safe space where people know they can freely discuss everything about the company themselves, and we are always working together to progress. Contact me at ron@thecooperculture.com. Our website is thecooperculture.com. Look forward to the opportunity to speak with your group, work with your group, to take your group to the next level to where we soar together. Let's work together. Now, help me with that, Ray, to the listener who, well, you just described what I do every day. I and whoever else, man, I can be triggered to an emotional, shouting contest and so forth. It seems your awareness was, hey, I no longer want to be this way.
Yes,
Is that kind of the way things started for you?
it is the way it started. And I got that first huge insight through doing that 10-day retreat. But I then found other ways of sort of deepening that learning, not just through Buddhist meditation, but through workshops and courses and books that I read as I continued my travels. And I just started to understand more and more that I could author my life to a much greater extent than I'd ever thought I could. That we're actually in the creative driving seat of who we are. Like, there's a coach in America called Tony Robbins. You must know him. Everyone knows him, right? if you read in one of his books, he talks about you're not just the actor in your life, you are the director and the script writer as well.
Yes.
So the way you author the scenes you're in, the words you choose, the character you play, all of that's in your domain, not just how you deal with the scene itself, how you speak the part. And so that kind of stuff had a big impact on how I saw myself, because particularly I saw myself as Ray the businessman in London, at the beginning of this journey. And I went through it's gone a long story. So something happened to me which enabled me to see and have an insight that Ray the businessman was a character. It wasn't actually me. I thought me and the businessman were one and the same thing, but I realized it wasn't. And that enabled me to free myself from having to fulfill that character. I just decided to stop playing that character for a while. So I think that's important that we have this. In my book, I wrote the 6 rules for happiness. That was the knowledge I gained from these 14 years. And rule number 3, I wrote as become your own observer, because you've got to be able to look at yourself from a distance and notice what you're thinking and how your thinking is working and how it's influencing your decisions. If you don't have that awareness, you can't look at yourself as if you were a third person and say, like, for example, if I'm angry, I can either just be angry, or I can say, listening to you, I notice I've got some anger rising in me. I'm noticing that. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to stay calm, but I notice that what you're saying is causing me to have some anger rising. And that's quite a different way of dealing with it than just being angry at you.
Yes. And I think what you're saying, Ray, is very applicable to not only individuals, but to leaders, because as we lead and we have people under our influence, there are some people who get angry over, and that affects the rest of their day and so forth. I think of this as awareness, and then coaching people to help them become perform at their maximum potential. Many people are not performing at their maximum potential because of different things that affect them. And you have reached that state of awareness where you now know. And yep, you still have different, some people don't like the word triggers, but there's still some things that can trigger different emotions within you.
Yeah.
But your awareness appears to be at a level that's saying, okay, wait a minute now. That's I need to work on that. And
that's really insightful, right? That's really insightful, because I actually work as a leadership coach. That's what I do for a living.
Great.
And so I am working with leaders every day or most days of the week to help them understand how to inspire people to their greatestness, because I think that's the job of a leader is to cultivate humans to become realize their greatest potential. It's not about yourself. It's more about rule number 6 in my 6 rules for happiness is that find other people and empower them to live in the same conscious way that you're living.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Ray, I want to ask you. I sense that our listeners would be very interested in knowing a little bit more about the 6 steps, the 6 principles, if you call it that. If
6
I can
rules
call
for
it
happiness, I call them the 6 rules for happiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 6 rules of happiness. Would you be willing to come back another episode to talk at least maybe at the top level of what those 6 rules of happiness are?
Yeah.
Because I know there's some people who are struggling with different things, and they're captivated by what you're saying, what you have learned.
Yeah, of course, Ron. It'll be my pleasure to do that. My joy in life and what my purpose is to be what I call it probably sounds a bit pretentious, but my purpose is to be a torchbearer for greater human consciousness. That's all I want to do with my life. And so that's a joy when you get an invite like that, one you've just given me. It makes my heart full of joy. I'd love to do that.
Oh, a torchbearer. I love it, Ray. Yes, and let our light so shine that others want to be a part of what we can help provide them to find meaning in life and so forth. Ray, we're going to look forward to coming back to continue our dialogue to learn more about those 6 steps. And we thank you on behalf of our listeners. Thank you for the life you're leading, and we look forward to continuing our dialogue.
Brilliant. Hopefully you'll let me know when you want me to do that.
Oh, it definitely will. We'll send you a calendar link, and we will continue this. Thank you, Ray.
Okay. Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.